stacked like a brick house. Hello and welcome to Yardline Yammer. It's your girl TT back with you. And as promised, I'm coming to you to break down the ESPN's top 25 preseason ranking. So coming in at number 1 is going to be the University of Georgia. Now, let's go and see what the moving parts were, who left, who came, and what we think is going to happen this year. The Dogs had a record of 13-1 last year, only losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game. Their 2023 schedule was moderate. Their first 2 games were layups, but let's break it down. First off, they had UT Martin winning 48-7. Second game was Ball State, and they won that one 45-3. Next was South Carolina. They won that one 24-14. Next was University of Alabama Birmingham, and they won that one 49-21. Really, Georgia? You let UAB get 21 points on you? Okay. Next was Auburn, and they beat them 27-20. That was another one. Next up was Kentucky, and Georgia was really getting into their groove. They beat them 51-13. Then we had Vanderbilt, who only had 2 wins last year, and Georgia beat them 37-20. Next was a bye week for them before they face off with Florida, winning that one 43-20. Then we had Missouri. Georgia won that one 30-21. Next was Ole Miss, and that win was 52-17. Yikes. Okay. Then we got Tennessee. The win was 38-10. And lastly was their in-state rivals, Georgia Tech, and they beat them 31-23 to round off the regular season. Then they faced off against Alabama in the SEC championship and had a surprising loss of 24-27 against the Roll Tide, who knocked them out of the Final Four. And that was quite the scandal. All right. Now let's move on to see who left to go to the NFL draft. On the offensive side, we had Brock Bowers, tight end, Kendall Milton, running back, Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, wide receiver, and Dejun Edwards. On the defensive side, there was Amaris Mims at tackle, Kamari Lassiter at the position of defensive back, Javon Bullard at the position of defensive back, Tyke Smith, defensive back, Cedric Van Granger at center, and Zion Logue, defensive tackle, and Tramel Walthrop at defensive end. So all of them went to the NFL. Congratulations to them. I mean, that says a lot about Georgia to send so many players to the NFL this year. So congrats to all of them. Now, we're going to look at the transfer portal. Who left in the transfer portal. On the offensive side, there was backup quarterback Brock Vandergraff, who went to Kentucky. He played in 7 games behind starting quarterback Carson Beck. He had 18 passing attempts for 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 sack. He also had 5 carries for 39 yards. Next was CJ Smith, wide receiver, and he's heading to Purdue. He played in 5 games, had 6 receptions for 116 yards, and 1 rushing carry for 4 yards. Next is Mekhi Muse, wide receiver. He's heading to University of Houston. He played in 7 games, had 13 receptions for 155 yards. Now we're going to move on to the defensive side for the transfer portal of those that are leaving. First is Nyland Green, cornerback. He is heading to Purdue. He played in 5 games, had 5 solo tackles, 2 assists, and 1 pass defended. Next is A.J. Harris, cornerback. He is heading to Penn State. He played in 3 games, had 3 solo tackles, and 5 assists. Then we have Jamin Dumas-Johnson, linebacker. He is heading to Kentucky. He played in 9 games, had 29 solo tackles, 5 assist tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 2 passes defended. Marvin Jones Jr. is an edge. He is heading to Florida State. He played in 7 games, had 7 solo tackles, 5 assists, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovered. Then there's Xavier Sori Jr., linebacker. He is heading to Arkansas, and he's coming out of Campbellton, Florida. I actually know where that is. Go Panhandle. All right, he played in 7 games, had 15 solo tackles, 4 assists, 1 sack, and 1 pass defended. Okay, dogs, you guys are losing some really good players. Hopefully you can make it up in the portal and in the new recruits. So first, we're going to go over the starters that are going to be coming back for the Bulldogs this year. We're going to start off with the quarterback, Carson Beck. Also, wide receivers, Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell, and Aaron Smith. On the offensive line, we have Ernest Green III, Dylan Fairchild, Micah Morris, Jared Wilson, Tate Ratledge, Xavier Truce, and Oscar Delp. Then on the defensive side, coming back for the Bulldogs is Michael Williams, Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, and Tyron Ingram Dawkins, all defensive linemen. Also, there will be Chaz Chambliss, Mel Mondin Jr., Samuel Mpembe, CJ Allen, all linebackers. And then we will also have Dalen Everett, Malachi Starks, and Jonel Aguero, and those are the defensive backs. Coming back for special teams is Peyton Woodring is the place kicker, and he was 84% last year, and also Brett Thorson, the punter. Now moving on to those that are joining the Bulldogs from the transfer portal. On the offensive side, we have Trevor Etienne, running back, coming out of Florida. Jaden Rashada, quarterback, coming from Arizona State. London Humphreys, wide receiver from Vanderbilt. Michael Jackson III, wide receiver from Southern Cal. And Kobe Young, wide receiver from Miami. I can say this, they are definitely stacked for wide receivers. I mean, did they leave any on the field for anyone else to get? It doesn't seem like it. Maybe we should all just take our balls and go home now. So, all right. Coming in on the defensive side is Benjamin Urasek, tight end from Syracuse. Jake Pope, defensive back from Alabama. And Xavier McLeod, defensive line from South Carolina. Georgia also got some great recruits. I'm just going to list the 4 and 5 stars. We got Ellen Robinson IV. He is at the position of cornerback. Justin Williams, linebacker. KJ Bolden, safety. Chris Cole, linebacker. Joseph Jonah Ajone, defensive line. Daniel Calhoun, offensive tackle. DeMello Jones, cornerback. Jordan Thomas, defensive line. Jaden Retto, tight end. Andre Evans, cornerback. Michael Unini, offensive tackle. And Terrian Tuggle, wide receiver. Christopher Jones, linebacker. Ryan Puglisi, quarterback. Marquise Easley, offensive tackle. And Nair Daniel, offensive tackle. Wow. Georgia is, I've said this before, stacked like a brick house. I mean, they don't have any places where they are lacking really this year. Now, on to the coaches. All of the coaching staff is returning except defensive coordinator coach Will Muschamp, who took an analyst position, and he was replaced by Travaris Robinson. Also, special teams coach Scott Cochran, he resigned, and he was replaced by Kirk Benedict. Then we have wide receiver coach Brian McClendon, who left for a job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he was replaced by James Coley. Then we have the running back coach Del McGee, who's the new head coach for Georgia State Panthers. And as of today, I haven't seen that he's been replaced. Okay, now that we've covered the players and the coaches, let's see what this year's schedule looks like and see how we think the Dogs will stack up. Coming in at week 1 is Clemson. I expect that star running back Trevor Etienne will be out for the Dogs for the opening game due to a DUI and reckless driving charge he received back in March. There was also another reckless driving incident with freshman wide receiver Sakovi White and I'm not sure if there will be any suspensions for him. In the Georgia rule, it states that there is a 1-game suspension for student athletes with DUI incidents. Clemson had an 8-4 season in 2023. They lost 6 players to the NFL draft, 5 of those on the defensive side, and the running back Will Shipley, who had 827 rushing yards, 244 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns for the Tigers last year. The Tigers also lost 10 players to the transfer portal and took in 0. Yes, 0 players from the transfer portal. I don't know. I mean, yeah. That being said, when watching the spring game, the defense was actually very impressive. It was the offense that really needed the help. They do have their quarterback returning, Cade Klubnik, but I'll be honest, I wasn't very impressed with his performance at the spring game. So I'm going to predict that Georgia will get a narrow win for this game. And I say narrow because the struggles they had last year in the first game. I know what the scoreboard says. I get it. But the first half of that game, they only scored 10 points against a team that they really should have just ran away with the game early and completely through. But they didn't. It took them a while to get their groove. Even the second game, I didn't see Georgia come right out of the box, on fire. And these were teams that we predicted that they would just kind of run away with it. The end score was, showed that they ran away with the game, but those first quarters, first half were a little bit more difficult for them. So I'm not sure if Georgia's going to have those same struggles this year as they find their footing. So I'm going to just predict that they're going to win by a narrow margin. Also, they're going to be missing their running back, their new superstar running back, Trevor Etienne. But we're going to go ahead and give that W to Georgia. The second week is going to be Tennessee Tech. And like you guys all know the story of David and Goliath, right? So this is not This is not that. I fully expect Georgia will take away this win very easily. Going into week 3 is going to be Kentucky. The Wildcats had a 7-6 season last year, and that's not really good. Okay, but it's not to say that with the right pieces, a program can't completely turn things around. Kentucky lost 7 players to the NFL draft, including their quarterback, Devin Leary. Kentucky also lost a few to the portal, but notably picked up Jamin Dumas Johnson and backup quarterback Brock Vandegraff from Georgia, and Trip Traham from Ohio State, who's all projected to start this year. That being said, I'm going to give the win to Georgia for the Kentucky game. Week 4 is going to be their bye week. Then we have week 5 is Alabama, who ESPN has ranked as number 7. Alabama had a record of 12-2 last year, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, so much has shaken up at Alabama that, we'll get into it when we get to Alabama. I've said this in my previous video, and I got some nasty comments from the Bama fans. But I'm going to go ahead and say it again. I just don't think Alabama is going to be that team this year. I do expect them to have a winning season, but I predict that they are going to have some growing pains. So Alabama lost 12 players to the NFL, and transfer portal was a hot mess for them this year after Saban's retirement. They had a few impressive pickups from the recruiting class, but I think they will need to learn to play together cohesively. Therefore, I'm predicting that Georgia will win this one. Not only a win, I think Georgia has a chip on their shoulder from last year, and I think they're going to put their foot on their neck. So we will see. But yeah, I'm predicting Georgia's going to win this one by a large margin. Going into week 6 is Auburn. And when I saw that Georgia chose Auburn for their homecoming game, I was kind of like, has Auburn fallen that far? Everybody chooses a team like that they know they can beat easily. And I'm like, wow, Auburn, that was disrespectful, Georgia. That was disrespectful. Okay, Auburn had a 6-7 record last year. Okay, I guess that's why Georgia chose them for homecoming. And Auburn lost 5 players way down in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds of the draft. Auburn also lost some players to the portal, but has some comparable pickups as well. I'm predicting Georgia will win this game easily. Going into week 7, it's going to be Mississippi State. Mississippi State had a record of 5-7 last year. Eesh. Okay, let's see what's happening with Mississippi. The Bulldogs lost 3 players to the NFL draft and several more that did not get an invite. They also lost more than they received via the portal. Starting quarterback is projected to be Blake Shapen, that transferred from Baylor University with a very impressive record. So I do expect that Mississippi State will have a better record than they did last year. I am projecting that Georgia will win this game. Week 8 is going to be Texas, who ESPN has ranked as number 3. Texas had a 12-2 record last year, and they are brand new to the SEC this year, and I think they're going to come in making waves right away. The Longhorns lost major players to the NFL this year on both the offensive and defensive side, but made major pickups in the portal from both Alabama and Arizona, as well as some nice pickups from the recruiting class. If Georgia is going to lose one, this will be the one. I'm predicting Georgia will narrowly lose this game, as it will be a great matchup, but it's going to be an away game. Week number 9 is a bye week. Then week number 10, they will be playing my Florida Gators. Florida had a record of 5-7. Oof. That's just sad, Gators. Okay. And to make things worse, they only lost 2 players to the NFL draft. Okay. Okay, let's go look and see what they gained. There were some great pickups from the transfer portal, including Chimere Dykes from Wisconsin, Elijah Badger from Arizona State, and Jason Zandamela from USC. Florida also had some impressive recruits this year, namely quarterback DJ Lagway. Most of the Florida starters will be back, so all we can do, Gator fans, is wish for a better season than last year. All that being said, Georgia is going to put a whooping on Florida this year for the 4th time in a row. And going into week 11 is Ole Miss, who ESPN has ranked as number 6. Ole Miss had a record of 11-2, losing only to Georgia and Alabama. The Rebels lost 8 players to the NFL draft, but is returning a good number of its players, along with some nice pickups from the portal. I expect that Ole Miss will be great again this season, especially since they have a much easier schedule than Georgia. That being said, I think this is going to be a tough game for Georgia, especially since it's another hard away game. But I do think Georgia will win this one by a close margin. I completely skipped over Tennessee, but I have Georgia for the win. Week 12 is UMass, University of Massachusetts. UMass had a record of 3-9 last year. Nothing more to be said about this other than Georgia will be taking away the win. And lastly, on week 13 will be Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets had a record of 7-6 last year. This is the big in-state rivalry, and Georgia Tech last beat the Georgia Bulldogs in 2016. Let's go ahead and add another L to the list for the Yellow Jackets, as I predict Georgia will win this game also. Now, is ESPN correct in ranking Georgia number 1? Yes, I don't expect any team to run the table this year. Therefore, there won't be any undefeated teams in the Big 5 conferences, I don't think. Even those with the easier schedules, I'm kind of thinking that's not going to happen. I fully expect that Georgia is going to make it to this year, going to be 12 teams in the playoffs. So I expect Georgia to make it to the top 4, possibly win. Next is going to be Ohio State and then Texas, that I'm going to be breaking down. So I'll get a better understanding of where they are as far as winning the entire championship. But so far, I do think Georgia is properly ranked at number 1, as I predict they will only have 1 loss this year. So if you guys agree, do let me know in the comment section. Also, if you disagree, let me know what you think about the moving parts, those that are leaving, those that are coming back, if you think it's going to have a bigger impact than what I think. So I'd love to hear your comments. Please leave them below. Next up will be Ohio State. So hit the notification bell so you know when that drops. And if you enjoy this content, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like and also subscribe to the channel to help us grow it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a good one. Goodbye.